Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on The Enemy Below 1957. I have always loved submarine movies because of the battle of wits with a limited sensor view of the enemy. And this movie has Robert Mitchum and some interesting Star Trek The Original Series and Star Trek The Next Generation connections. This was the sixth film directed by Hoofer-turned-film noir guy Dick Powell. I will talk more about that in the conclusions. This movie has a decent 7.4 rating on IMDb.com. On RottenTomatoes.com, the film does quite well with 86% on the tomato meter and an 87% audience approval. The New York Times gave a very mixed review indicating that they loved it or at least hated this film. I have edited this review for brevity. The review begins with the following, quote, "It's easy to see why 20th Century Fox picked up The Enemy Below, the British novel by Commander D.A. Rayner, and made a movie out of it. The story about a surface vessel in a duel to the death with an enemy undersea craft has a ready-made element of running suspense that would give an automatic unity to any film hewing to the basic narrative of the original. The melodramatic exchange of blows between an American destroyer escort and a German submarine are graphically splashed across the screen in color. By their very nature, such scenes make a good spectacle for the screen. In other respects, however, the film fails to live up to its literary model. Commander Rayner effectively conveyed the relish of both a seaman and a chess player when he pitted these two equally powerful and equally determined adversaries against each other in a lonely expanse of sea far beyond the help of the countries they represented. Instead, we have something closer to a standard Navy melodrama with only a faint overlay of the psychological duel between the two commanders remaining. It was implicit in the book that such tough, realistic warriors of the sea were aware of this sort of sentiment right along, even as they ironically hounded and pursued each other to the death. Hey, be sure and subscribe and leave a comment below. Actors. The great Robert Mitchum played Commander Merle, returning to command after having another ship sunk from underneath him. This actor was covered in the great film noir Out of the Past 1947. Theodore Bikel was believable as Heine Schwaffer, second in command of the German sub. This actor was covered in another film noir, I Want to Live 1958. Kurt Jürgens played the German U-boat skipper von Stolberg. Jürgens was born in Germany in 1915. He began work as a journalist, but his actress wife, Louise Bassler, convinced him to take up acting. He spent the early part of his career working on the Austrian stage. Jürgens began working in the German film industry in 1935. He continued to work in Nazi Germany until a dispute in 1944 landed him in a labor camp and he was designated politically unreliable. Following World War II, Jürgens continued to work in film in Europe. His first American film was today's film, The Enemy Below 1957. He is known for The Devil's General 1955 and God Created Women 1956, The Blue Angel 1959, The Enemy Below 1957, The Longest Day 1962, Lord Jim 1965, The Battle of Britain 1969, and Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me 1977. Jürgens died in 1982. David Hedison was cast as Lieutenant Ware, second in command of the American destroyer. He was born in Rhode Island in 1927. Hedison served in the U.S. Navy before attending Brown University. At Brown, he began acting on stage. Later, he moved to New York and studied at the Neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater. He continued to work on stage. Hedison started working on television in 1954. His first film role was today's film, The Enemy Below 1957. The following year, he had an important role in The Fly 1958. Other films include The Lost World 1960, two James Bond films, Live and Let Die 1973, and License to Kill 1989. I would have to say Hedison was primarily a television actor, and this is undoubtedly where I know him from. Hedison was on 16 episodes of Five Fingers from 1959 to 1960. He played Captain Crane in 110 episodes of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea 1964 to 1968. He was on the soaps with 72 episodes on Another World from 1991 to 1995. Hedison was also in 50 episodes of The Young and Restless in 2004. He was a regular on many of the most popular television shows each year. He died in 2019. Story. As the credits roll, a World War II-era destroyer slices through the open ocean. At least once, the view is through a U-boat's periscope. The location is the South Atlantic. The doctor, Russell Collins, puffs a pipe as he walks the deck and talks to the crew. The men are bellyaching about the new captain, complaining that he has no experience and can jeopardize the crew. Doc almost goes to talk to the captain, but decides to go to the wardroom where Lieutenant Ware, David Hedison, and some other officers, including Ensign Mary, a very young Doug McClure, are playing cards. They are also concerned about the new captain, who has not left his cabin so far on the voyage. The doc tells the officers that the new skipper, Captain Merle, Robert Mitchum, had his last ship torpedoed and spent 25 days in a life raft. The general opinion is that their ship will not see much action and it will be easy duty for the new skipper. As night falls, the ship heads into a storm. Everything is quiet on night watch until the radar picks up a blip. Lieutenant Ware jumps into action and calls the captain. Captain allows Ware to make the decision. But is it because he doesn't know what to do? The ship steams towards the target. The target is on a heading of 140. As the destroyer steams towards its target, the men rise from their bunk and wait for orders. Calmly, Captain Murrell makes his way through the crowd and goes to the radar scope. Murrell asks the radar operator his opinion of the target. The operator thinks it may be the conning tower of a submarine. Murrell tells Ware to slow the ship to firm up the radar contact. They will wait for sunrise to approach the target. Inside the German submarine, the sonar operator is getting a signal that the destroyer is behind them. The pigboat captain, von Stolberg, Kurt Jürgens, and his executive officer and friend, Heine Schwaffer, Theodore Bikel, are with the sonar operator. Stolberg orders a 20-degree turn to verify that their contact is genuine. On the destroyer's bridge, Murrell knows that the German is making sharp turns to see if what is tracking them responds. Murrell cuts the engines on his ship. On the German sub, the captain is satisfied that he is not being followed, and he has the sub return to course 140. Murrell resumes following the sub and warns the crew that the sub will make more course changes and speed up or slow down to see if the sub is being followed. This is very similar to the Crazy Ivan turns used much later in The Hunt for Red October 1990, a movie I believe owes much to today's film. Murrell briefs the crew and expects to battle with the sub after sunrise. On the sub, Stolberg looks contemptuously at a sign that says, Führer, Befehl, wir folgen, which roughly leader orders we follow. Kuntz, Arthur Laral, a dedicated Nazi, comes forward. Stolberg leaves Kuntz in charge while he gets some rest, but first he has to talk to Heine. Stolberg complains about Kuntz and the leadership back in Germany. Heine wants to dive in case the sonar contact is genuine. Stolberg says they can't because they have 48 hours to meet with Raider Ship M, where they will pick up a British code book and then make their way back to Germany. Stolberg is more concerned with the getting home part of the mission. He is worn down by years in submarines extending back to the First World War. He also speaks of his 2 sons killed in the war. Stolberg talks about the better days of World War I when everything was more basic and fallible. He doesn't like the level of automation that has crept into the machines. Heine listens but doesn't weigh in on the politics. When Stolberg falls asleep, Heine carefully covers him with a blanket. Murrell is on the ship's deck and calls Lieutenant Crane, Frank Albertson, up to ask about the speed of the depth charge crew. Murrell is told that they are pretty green and reloading takes about 3 minutes. He demands better performance. Doc encourages Murrell to rest, but the captain insists on staying on deck. Doc says that Murrell is a hunter. Murrell tells the doc that he was a freighter officer, not a professional Navy man. Ware reports that the sub has increased speed, and Murrell instructs him to match the speed and movement. Murrell has resigned himself to the idea that war will always be with humanity. He also says he was married to an Englishwoman that was killed on her way to America during a torpedo attack. Yet he doesn't hate. Murrell returns to work and tells the engine room to stop making black smoke before dawn. I know how to make black smoke on a ship, but if anyone knows how to make it white, please leave a comment below. The day dawns clear and bright. The destroyer crew is sent to their battle stations. Murrell prepares a message to be sent as soon as the attack begins. They increase speed to close on the sub. The German sub is on the surface and has to make a crash dive. Merle hopes to get close enough to use his deck guns before the sub disappears. Suddenly, Merle slows his ship and changes course, giving the sub a free shot with their aft torpedoes. When questioned by Ware, Merle explains that once the aft tubes are fired, the Germans can't easily reload them and the destroyer can make free attacks on the back of the sub. Merle has made his calculations on when the German sub will fire. Stolberg is surprised that the destroyer is presenting such a tempting target. He has the sub come to periscope depth of 80 meters. Stolberg orders an attack from the stern tubes as Merle predicted. The Germans fire the 2 aft torpedoes. Merle turns the destroyer just in time to avoid the 2 torpedoes streaking by his ship. He begins his first attack run. Stolberg has the sub go to 100 meters with a heading of 140. The destroyer uses sonar to track the sub. The destroyer crosses the tail of the sub and comes to 140. The depth charges are set for 75 meters. Stolberg dives to 150 meters and the depth charges have to be reset. Merle orders the charges dropped and one sailor loses his fingers because he is too slow. No harm is done to the sub other than a bit of shaking. The sub releases oil to confuse the sonar. The sub is turned to 180. Merle has the depth charges set for a deeper depth. Stolberg reverses direction and comes up to 50 meters, going directly under the destroyer. The Americans have lost the sub. Merle goes to the mapping room and estimates where the sub will be if he returns to 140. They have 30 minutes to determine if the captain is right. Merle uses the time to visit the injured man and apologize for the accident. The injured man was a watchmaker in civilian life. The dispatch comes in and the officers meet to discuss the next move. Other destroyers are coming to aid the hunt for the sub, but it will be at least half a day. They also now know that the sub is heading to meet with a well-armed German raider ship. Stolberg brings the sub up to periscope depth. The destroyer makes another attack run, and the sub has to emergency dive. Again, the depth charges shake the German sub, but they don't destroy it. Stolberg takes the sub down to the bottom, which is over 300 meters deep, and the sub should not be able to withstand that pressure. Merle knows what the German has done, so he brings his ship to a full stop. The captain asks for silence on the ship. The Americans are still using the sonar, but in passive mode. No pings. In a unique film transition, they follow a fishing line from the ship into the water and then continue to the sub. Men on both vessels are reading and waiting. On Heine's advice, the submarine rises from the bottom and takes a heading of 140. Merle puts the destroyer on a heading of 140 and the hunt is on again. Once they pinpoint the sub, Merle calls a conference with the ship's officers and senior NCOs. Merle's plan is to run in, drop charges, and fall back. They will keep doing this to slow the sub down and wait for support. The long battle is hard on both vessels as the men are tense. Stolberg has to calm down a German man that has gone mad during the attack. The hardcore Nazi member of the crew wants to surrender. Stolberg has a rousing 18th century German march played to motivate his crew. The American sonar picks up the noise from the song. Wasn't that in the hunt for Red October too? Merle orders the ship in for another attack. The sub sends an oil slick. Merle orders his ship to 140 to play the cat and mouse game. Stolberg asks which direction Merle has been turning the destroyer after each attack. He realizes that Merle has turned in the same direction twice. He says if the Americans do it again, although they will not have time to raise the periscope, they will fire all of their torpedoes in a widespread pattern in hopes of hitting by luck. Merle orders another attack and turns starboard following the attack. 4 torpedoes are fired at the ship. Merle orders evasive turns, but it's too late. The destroyer is hit mid-beam in the forward fire room. Merle orders mattresses burned on the deck to look worse off than they are. He then asks the engine room to be able to give the ship one last blast of power. The captain then orders most of the crew to abandon the ship. Stolberg watches from periscope depth. He falls for the trick. The German skipper orders the sub up to the surface for attack. The Germans signal the ship that they have 5 minutes before the attack. The American captain responds, "Message received and understood." Merle tells the gun crew to fire first at the sub's stern and then the deck guns. After that, they are to keep firing. The Germans get ready to fire a torpedo. Merle orders full power and then tells the engine crew to abandon the ship. Both sides hit each other with their guns. With the destroyer moving towards the sub, Stolberg orders detonators set and the sub abandoned. Murrell rams the sub, driving his hull onto the sub's deck. Murrell orders more of his men off the ship as he watches the Germans jumping from their sub. Heine is missing, and Stolberg goes after him. He finds him below wounded, but the German captain gets him to the top of the sub. Stolberg sees Murrell and gives him a salute. Murrell returns the salute. This harkens back to the early days of World War I, when pilots would still salute each other. Murrell throws a rope to the two Germans as the detonators tick down. Murrell's ship is about to go down as well. Stolberg gets the rope attached and sends Heine across. When Ward makes it to a lifeboat, he finds that Murrell is still on the destroyer. He orders the lifeboat in close to help. Stolberg crosses on the rope hand over hand. He insists on carrying Heine because he is his friend. Murrell helps. Americans from the lifeboat and Germans from the water all climb aboard the destroyer to save their captains. Once they are clear, the sub explodes and the destroyer also goes down. Later, the relief destroyers arrive and save most of the crews. They have a funeral for Heine. The doc tells Murrell that he has seen reason for hope. Murrell and Stolberg share a cigarette. Macho man. Stolberg says he survived because of Murrell. Murrell says next time he won't throw the rope. Stolberg responds, I think you will. Oh man, that's how America should be. Conclusion. First things first. This movie is the same story as Star Trek 1966, Season 1, Episode 14, Balance of Terra, aired in December of that year. In Balance of Terra, a cloak-equipped Romulan ship crosses the neutral zone. The ship's commander is played by Mark Leonard, who would later play Sarek, Spock's father. As Captain Kirk on the Enterprise, William Shatner detects and follows the hidden ship in what is clearly a destroyer versus a submarine. Theodore Bikel played a German in this film. As well as being an actor, he had a second career as a singer of Jewish, Russian, and Gypsy folk music. Bikel played a Russian submarine commander in the screwball comedy The Russians Are Coming, 1966. Much later, he played Klingon Worf's adoptive father, Sergei, on Star Trek The Next Generation in 1990. Director Dick Powell shot two endings for this film, one where both captains lived and one where they both died. These were shown to test audiences, and the ending where they both lived was overwhelmingly chosen. The German U-boat used in this film looks like a luxury liner with plenty of room and amenities. The West German film Das Boot 1981 showed a much more realistic depiction of a submarine. If anyone knows why submarines were called pig boats, please leave a comment below. World famous short summary, don't mess with Mitchum. If you want to support the show and help me make more videos, drop by our store or buy something from one of the affiliate links below where I will receive a small commission and you'll still be charged the same thing. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Beware the Moors.